Webinar, bang on time, as with all of them, is being recorded. So you are welcome to have your cameras on or off. We will keep ask people to be muted for the time being. There will be a chance to, if you want to put questions in, you can pop those in the chat. We've got Imogen here, who is my tech support cheerleader, who will be able to help you with anything. In the meantime, I have got a secondary screen, so I will do my best to keep an eye on the chat as well. But if there's something that you really want to say, please, you don't have to wait till the end to chip in. It's all for you guys. I want you to get as much as you can out today. So I'm just going to pop my screen on share. And it's this one. I wanted to. Beginning. And oops, we're going to go to present view. Oh, oh, bear with me a second.
I liked it.
Oh, that's absolute spoilers for the end, that bit. Okay. There. Let's try that share again. There we go. Perfect. Hopefully you can all see. So as I expect you're aware, my name is Hannah. If you haven't met me before, I am the Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator at IH World Organization. And I've worked with IH in different capacities over the years, doing things like teaching, student welfare, working alongside principals, doing marketing as well. So it's really a really lovely thing for me to be here speaking to all of you today, because this combines so many of my favorite things to talk about. And it's always just good vibes in this kind of industry, isn't it? So thank you for spending your Friday afternoon or morning or evening, whatever time it is, with me today. As I mentioned, I am going to start you off with a warmer in true teacher style. So what I would like you to do, if you're happy to join in with me, is in the chat, could you share your location? You can say the country or the city or the school if you want, up to you, what your role is in that place. And I would like you to tell me your favorite smell. I would like you to pop in the chat what your favorite smell is. And this one often makes people think that they don't have one, but if you give it a minute, I'm sure that you will have one that comes to mind. And I will share mine with you at the end. I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to do this. Lovely. I've got Coimbra, Portugal, a teacher, and coffee. Fantastic. Anyone else want to jump in and have a look? Oh, jasmine. Yes, love that. Grass after the rain. Oh, that's gorgeous. And chocolate, lavender. Love this. Oh, a library. Yes, that is a very particular smell, isn't it? I love the smell of a library. Brilliant. Lemon, roses, coffee, new books. Yeah, there's some themes coming up already. I love that. Cool. Lavender as well. Sandalwood. Oh, I love the smell of sandalwood. Actually, I haven't smelled that for ages. I really like that one. I do this exercise with a lot of different groups of people, and actually there some of the ones that have come up in here come up in every single group. Coffee, grass, like flowers. These are really typical favorite smells, kind of wherever you are, whatever group, whatever age. These ones come up a lot. Oh, oud. I like that smell as well. I never know how to say it. Oud. I don't know, but I know the smell you mean. It's a good one. My favorite smell is actually really weird, and no one's come up with anything like it. So please don't judge. My favorite smell is, do you know dishwasher tablets that come in like a packet? When you open them up, like not just the, like I don't mind the kind of powdered ones, but the ones with the gel in, I love that smell of that bag when you open it. And I don't know what it was, when I was pregnant with my third child, I got like obsessed with that smell, like kind of addicted to it, and it stayed with me. It didn't disappear when my youngest was born, and now every time I load the dishwasher, I like to like, stick my face in the bag and have a good smell of that really nice, like fresh, clean smell. Thank you everyone for sharing. Oh, we've got a beach as well. Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? The smell of the sea and a sandy beach. So I like that activity because it's fun, but I also like to notice the similarities and differences between the smells that people choose, and it often kind of makes people giggle as well. But the thing with smells is that we choose them usually because they hold some kind of emotional memory for us. These smells, our sense of smell is a really evocative sense, and it will tap into something that elicits like a physical response and maybe pulls us to a time or a place where we felt like really good or happy or relaxed. And it triggers that emotional response in our bodies, and essentially that's really what we're trying to do when it comes to marketing, isn't it? We want to elicit a response that creates a reaction. So it is relevant. And also, I'm just kind of being nosy too. So today, what are we expecting? If you are happy to, it would be great to just hear from you guys again in the chat. One thing you are hoping to learn or take away from today. And I will do my best to cover it in the session. And if it doesn't come up, then we can find a way to talk about it separately. So what would you like to take away from today's session? What are you hoping to learn? Or you don't have to write anything in the chat if you don't want to. Maybe you're just here with open ears to try and see what new things you can pick up, and that's fine as well. Like I said at the beginning, if you have got questions throughout, you can ask them. And if something at the end you think, you know what, actually I wanted to hear more about that, then you can always get in touch with me. I'll make sure you've all got my email address if you haven't already. Difference between representation and tokenism, I mean, yeah, that's the title, so hopefully I'll get that covered for you. But it's a good one, I think, that question. And it can feel like a bit of a fine line. It can feel like a tricky area where we want to do things well, we want to get it right, but actually the fear of getting it wrong can sometimes hold us back from any action at all. Marketing and inclusion, yes, that's something that will be covered in what we're talking about. We're only here for an hour today, so that's something I can promise you, is that I will keep you for no more than 1 hour. So there's only so much that we can do, and we'll cover a little bit of a kind of a range of different topics, but I will always happily signpost you into areas where you can learn more and dive deeper, because it's such a big topic and it's not a kind of one and done sort of thing. It's about learning and listening and evolution. So there'll always be more to pick up. Brilliant. So like I said, I'll keep you for an hour max, and I'll welcome questions as we go. And at the end, you can type them in the chat. If you really want to say something, you can pop your hand up, and we can also talk that way as well. That's fine. I'd like it to feel quite relaxed. Just also to say that when we're talking about EDIB, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, there are topics that come up that can leave us feeling like a bit awkward. They might make us feel uncomfortable. They might make us feel like really angry, for all different kinds of reasons. And there might also be things that come up, maybe that I say or that someone else says, that you just actually disagree with. And that's fine. We can be uncomfortable and we can disagree with each other. That's not a problem. We're not trying to avoid any of those things. What I do ask, and I ask this in all my sessions, and I ask this in all my classrooms as well when I was teaching, is that whatever we share, whatever we challenge, whatever we question, that we do so with the intention of kindness. In this room, as with all of the webinars that we've had throughout this series, there is just such an immense amount of wisdom and experience, both in the classroom, professionally, in our schools, and also like lived experience in the world. So I really just want to honor and respect all of that wisdom and experience, both from me to you and you guys amongst each other as well. So let's get to it. Here are some of the things that we're going to cover. Obviously, the title is representation versus tokenism. What's the difference? We're going to think about why bother? Why is it important? What really is that difference between those two terms that we hear so much? How can we get this right? And what should we do when we get it wrong? And you'll notice that I've chosen when and not if, because when we're learning, we make mistakes. That's okay. If we're too afraid to make mistakes, we'll never change anything. And it's all about what we do next. That really is the mark of who we are and what our intentions are. So that's some of the things that we're going to cover. And we're going to start with the why bother. Oh, hang on, that one. So first and foremost, as everybody here I'm sure knows already, our industry is diverse by design. We are in the business of bringing people together to learn together, and there's always going to be diversity wherever you go. It just exists in our industry in particular. And I think in terms of marketing in our sector, we are now starting to enter a phase where we're moving away from intentionally showing particular age groups, genders, and ethnicity because of the image that we hope they'll portray, or because we think it might be favourable. We are looking now at being more balanced and more representative, both of the students within our school and the staff within our school, and those in the world which we'd like to attract, even if they're not already with us yet. If, however, you feel like your school or you're not quite there yet, or perhaps you know some other people who still aren't quite sold on why this is important, I've got a few little stats that might just help you. So we're always talking about millennials, aren't we? But they do make up quite a large portion of spending power these days. So 70%, 77% of millennials indicated that they are more likely to trust brands that have diverse marketing. This is across the board. Over 50% of UK consumers are influenced by a brand's diversity and inclusion efforts when they decide what they want to buy, or whether they want to buy anything at all. And the worldwide, the LGBTQIA+ population is estimated to be about 8% of the world identifying as homosexual, bisexual, or pansexual. And the estimates are generally lower than the reality. That is a huge portion of our market that if we're not representing in our marketing, we're missing out on calling them into our schools. And finally, the WHO, the World Health Organization, reports that globally about 15% of the world population is living with a disability. And I mention this one because I think people with disabilities are often underrepresented in visual materials, or you might just get like kind of one person in a wheelchair as a bit of a token gesture. So it's really important to think about who is in our audience and our potential audience. And there's this quote here, who I haven't referenced, but it's by somebody called Michael P. Crone. And it's quite old, actually. It's from a paper from about 2007. But I think that this really rings true, and it really does summarize it, doesn't it? If our customers are different to us, which some of them will be, and they're not recognized, then we will begin to lose them. And this is things that we've seen. This is well evidenced. So representative and diverse marketing is all about creating campaigns where prospective and current students can see themselves in our schools. When they're looking through our socials, when they're reading our brochures, when they're looking through our websites, we want students to get that feeling of like, this school is for people just like me. I can see myself there. I'll be welcome there. I can learn there. I can have fun there. I can make friends there. Need to be able to picture themselves in our schools. And this also applies to staff as well, who might be thinking about coming to work with us. And the staff that do already work with us, are they reflected as well in the image that we put out about ourselves in the world? Do you see yourself reflected in the imagery that your school puts out into the world? Representation is about understanding the diverse makeup of our current and prospective client base and making sure that we're speaking to them in their language. And I don't just mean like English, French, Spanish, Arabic. I mean in the kind of words that they use as well. And that we're also speaking to them through channels that are meaningful to them, places where they actually hang out. And when we do this well, when we get it right, representative marketing improves engagement with our brand, it improves our brand's reputation, and ultimately that translates into sales. And we know that the bottom line is really important, isn't it? So the key question, what is the difference between these two words? And I can kind of answer it pretty simply, actually, in the next slide. So diversity without inclusivity, without inclusive practice, is essentially tokenism. And what that means is that having people around for the sake of it, because we think that their presence will add some kind of value or make us look good or tick a box, having people around for these reasons, but without doing our best to give them that same high quality, excellent, safe, included experience as the majority group, that will come down to tokenism. Having people there, but we're not bringing them in. So if your advertising looks like this, but your classroom or your staff room looks more like this, then that's something to be aware of. It's not like a terrible, horrible mistake, but it's just something to note and be mindful of. And you might be thinking, what if we want our marketing to be more diverse, but our current demographic, people who are in our school, isn't quite there yet? And I am here to tell you that that's okay, because we all have to start somewhere. And I am, if you know anything about me, you know that I'm here for messy and imperfect progress. That's fine. We can't make progress without making a bit of a mess and without getting things wrong sometimes. But the key factor here is honesty and authenticity. So it's about working with our strengths and building on them. And this is a really, really good place to start. Nothing about us without us. When we're making decisions that are designed to, well, that are going to impact on groups that have been traditionally underrepresented or that may have been harmed in the past, we need to include people, the people that we're targeting, in the conversation. So what groups of students have you got in your school that were perhaps underrepresented in the past and you've got a bit better at attracting them? Do you have any students who might be brave enough to become ambassadors and share their stories? I would say that this is something that can be really, really effective, because we call it, it's like social proof, isn't it? We love to see people that remind us of ourselves, but it's also something to approach with care and caution, because when we ask someone to share their lived experience, it's quite a precious thing. We need to center their own experience. It's not about us, it's about them. And we also need to honor their feelings. There are also ways that we can share people's stories anonymously if that feels safer and more comfortable. And we can do things like creating kind of avatars using real stories, but attaching them to sort of fictionalized characters that still represent those groups of people that might not have seen themselves represented in our materials before. Other methods that are really, really helpful that I expect lots of you have tried are things like creating focus groups to find out where our blind spots might be. If we want to attract more LGBTQIA plus students, we might want to attract more neurodivergent students. We might need more Black and Brown teachers joining our school or on our CELTA or our Trinity course. Then if they're not already coming, then we need to go out and find them and speak to them. Speak to the people who aren't signing up, and we need to find out why. You don't have to be the expert on what every different group or community might want or need from your school, because someone out there already is. What our job is to go out and find them. And the other point to raise here is that having diverse kind of workforces and staff within your school will only make all of this stuff much, much easier. So my next point here is about congruence. It's about our actions and our words matching up. So when we think about, I'd like to think about it in terms of these three questions. I like to think of the what, the how, and the where. So what are the words that we're using? What is the language? Is our language inclusive all the way through our copy? On our website, in our brochures, in the way that we speak, on our social media? What about in our style guides? we can find unconscious bias in language without even realizing it's there. It's the very, very nature of an unconscious bias. Do we use AI? AI can be really influenced by what's put into it. And again, it can absorb our bias as well. What about our emails that we're sending out to agents, to prospective students, even internally? The language of inclusivity needs to feed through everything that we're doing. So that's the what. What about the how? How do we write? Is the format in which we're writing accessible? Are we using image descriptions and alternative text? We can also think about elements like navigation for people who don't see or hear as well as others in our audience. How we use color can affect how easy something is to read. Things like transcripts for audio and video interviews, all of these things make such a difference to how accessible our marketing materials can be. And did you know there are particular color contrasts that could be easier or more difficult for people with things like dyslexia to read? There is so much that we can be doing, and it can feel scary. And it's okay if you're not doing all of it, because there's always stuff to learn. But there are agencies out there who specialize in accessibility. So we can do an accessibility audit, or we can also follow, experts online who will give you loads of tips for free. And it's about integrating what you learn as you learn it. So it's also a question of investing possibly time or money into some training and some learning for you and your teams so that you can get up to speed, and then refreshing that and listening if people give you feedback. And finally, the where, which we touched on a little bit earlier. Thinking here about what channels we're using to advertise. Who are we reaching and who are we missing by sticking to these channels? Sometimes it can be hard to think about who's not there. But if we're using the same few channels to communicate with people, the same formats, then there's always going to be a wider audience outside of that. And it's listening to where those people might be. So we're going to take a little pause in a minute. And I am going to pop you, actually, Imogen is going to pop you into breakout rooms. And we'll spend about 10 minutes in 10 or 15 minutes in breakout rooms in groups of kind of 3 or 4. And I'd like you just now to take a moment to reflect on these 3 questions, thinking about the topics that we've just touched on, looking at what's going well already in your school. What areas could you identify for growth? And these might be things that are within your control, and they might also be things that belong to kind of other people in the school leadership teams. But either way, what areas can you see where you could grow, and why would this be useful for your school? Who's it going to benefit? Is it going to make you more money? Is it going to make your students happier? Why is that important? And finally, what skills and or resources might you need to get from where you are now to improving in those next areas? So you might want to take a little picture or note down those questions. And then in like 1 minute, I'll ask Imogen just to pop you all into breakout rooms of, ideally 3 or 4 people. We'll spend 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Lovely. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had a moment to discuss some of the questions there. I would really love to hear from you guys. Like I said at the beginning, there is so much wisdom and experience in this virtual room. So if anyone is willing to share, you can put your hand up or you can write a point in the chat, and it can be the answer to any of the questions. So what's going well? So something that you're doing that you think you're doing really well in your school, or something you've seen that's really good. It could be areas for growth, and it could be any skills or resources that you might need. So let me see. I can see everybody. Imogen, can you keep an eye out and see if anybody's got their hand up for me? And I'll have a little look at the chat. Thank you. It could also be any other points that came up for you as well. If there's something that you just felt really stuck on, you don't know the answer to, you can pop that in the chat or raise a hand as well. And there is absolutely no judgment here. The way that I work whenever it comes to things like improving our diversity and inclusive practice is always about looking at our strengths and where we're doing things well, thinking about building on those rather than making a list of all the things that we're doing wrong, because I don't think anybody does their best work like that. Okay, lovely. So I've got in the chat now, so working with learners who have with dyslexia and some blind students. So that's something that's already going on in your schools, and that's amazing. Is that something that you might be that you're able to share? Are they stories that you're able to share or demonstrate in your materials, I wonder? How do other students with dyslexia or other blind students who might be thinking, wondering whether they can study with you, how do they know that they will have such a great experience if they come to your school? That's a really good one. I think there's so much good stuff happening in our schools already, actually. It's about how we can get the message out. Mariana, would you be willing to unmute and share a little bit about this point that came up in your group? Okay.
Yes, I was typing, but it's a lot better
Thank you.
to say. So we were commenting that in my school, for example, we have a large community of blind students, and whenever we met them back in 2018, we realized that we had no material to work with them. So we partnered with, or we teamed up with Pearson and a local community to make those materials available for the blind. So we have to make them accessible for them. So young generations of they don't know how to read Braille because they have new systems in their own devices or computers that read in a loud voice whatever somebody else is writing or typing. So what they do is they hear the books and the photographs are described. So for example, if you have a family, say, okay, there's a mother, there's a father, and there are two sons or their two daughters having breakfast. It's a sunny day. So they have the background of the picture, and they have instructions, specific instructions for the exercises. And those students live together with, I would say, our regular students. So, and the pace of the classes is the usual, and we have video scripts that are, video clips that are already accessible for blind students. So they hear a kind of second soundtrack because it's like describing what the video is about. So it's a great experience. We have approximately 300 students who are blind in our local school. Yeah, a lot.
That's fantastic. What's your school?
It's in Argentina. It's called Centro Universitario de Idiomas.
Wow.
It's based in Buenos Aires, and we teach online and face-to-face classes.
Incredible. What a success story. It's so lovely, isn't it? And I think once you've done it once, it's easier, isn't it, to to
Mm.
repeat the experience. And do you advertise the fact that you are so open and accessible to students with blindness and visual impairment?
Well, the local community, the local blind community, yes, they do know that we
Mm,
exist, but we don't massively market it.
mm. I think yeah, I think that's lovely, that word of mouth marketing as well. And what I'm thinking when you're sharing these stories is that there'll be students in other parts of the world who might not be your prospective students, but in knowing those stories, they might see themselves as language learners where perhaps they might not have been, represented in schools that they have come across. So it's like it's a really, I love the ripple effect of that, as that word gets out.
Interestingly, and I finish here.
Mm,
Interestingly, when we contacted Pearson
yeah.
headquarters in London, they
Mm,
said, no, we have nothing about that. We have no material for the blind. So we had to produce it locally. So it's
wow.
very time consuming and very costly.
Yes.
So I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to grow. We have
Yeah.
grown a lot with them.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. And you're right, it's for everyone, isn't it? It's not just the students, it's their peers, their classmates who might not have worked
Mhm.
someone
Yeah.
with someone who's blind before. It's the teachers. And when you're faced with teaching a student that you might think, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I don't know how to make this work. It's really empowering to overcome what might seem like an obstacle together. I think that's brilliant. A round of applause. Great work. I love to hear it. 300 students. That's amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mariana. That's amazing.
Pleasure.
I'm just going to read out a couple of more from the chat that I've got here. So we've got projects about musicals and sport contests and about theatre representations. Oh, lovely. So is that Antonella? Would you be able to share a little bit more about that if you don't mind unmuting? Or I'm not going to force anybody to talk if they don't want to, but it sounds really good. I'm going to read the next one. And if anybody does want to chip in, just pop your hand up and I'll make sure everybody gets a chance to speak if they would like to. So we've got Abir has said we have diversity at our school staff and students, which is not highlighted in our content, for example, or the school's values. I think we need more resources to apply diversity in our school, especially for students with disabilities. So Abir, I guess you're saying that there is good diversity amongst the staff and students, but perhaps it's not shown as much in the content and the school's values. Does that sound right? Trying to find everyone in my gallery because I think that is a real challenge, isn't it? And that's what I mean about it being an ongoing piece of work, and that we might find we're doing quite well in one area, but that's not translating through to our marketing or vice versa. And it's about sort of, we'll talk about this in a minute. It's about acknowledging that and naming it, and just being really honest about what we're working on, and what we might need to do. Oh, and we've got a question as well. Let me just make sure I've read all of those. How do you think about writing content shows the school supports diversity without being so direct? Well, that's a good question. So let me make sure I've got this right. How can you write content? And I think, well, I guess looking at some of the points that we covered earlier, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, and it's the imagery that goes along with that, and it's also where you put it as well. So I think there's sort of the words are only one part of the communication. So I think thinking about if you want to be less direct and or it's not quite so easy to be so clear in the words that you're using, I would think about how accessible you're making that language, what kind of images are going along with it, and where you might be advertising it, where you might be putting out, what kind of communities you might be sharing it in. And then again, speaking to the people that you would like to reach. I think that's really important as well. If there are people that you want to, I guess, kind of invite really into your school community that aren't already there, any links that you've got with those people to share what you've already got and ask about how that might be able to be improved. And you might not be able to do everything that they want or need, but there's usually somewhere that you can move the needle a little bit, and just keep getting that feedback, keep listening to the people that you want to attract because they're the experts. We've got a couple more slides and I've got like 2 short videos that I want to show you. So I'm going to move on. But if you find that there's something else that you want to share or any other questions, please do continue to pop them into the chat for me. So this question, maybe you've seen this meme, it always makes me laugh. Because often we are really diverse, but what we find is that diversity can be quite like bottom heavy. And the further up an organization we go, the more homogenous it becomes, the less variation we see amongst things like genders, disabilities, ethnicities, religious backgrounds, etc. And it will look different wherever you are in the world, but generally that's the trend, that the higher up you go, the more of the kind of majority population you might see near at the top. And that's not down to usually one mean person trying to keep everybody out. It's usually a bit more subtle than that. It's often down to systems and very long historic things that have been in place that have privileged certain groups and disadvantaged others. About the uneven distribution of opportunity and resource. But the question here, really, if we come back to marketing, is if you want to stay on the side of representation and steer clear of that kind of tokenism side, the question is really, do you practice what you preach? Do the students that we show in our marketing match the people in our school? And what about the staff as well? And it really is a twofold point, because yes, we need to live our values by being inclusive on the inside and on the outside. And it's not just about who you've got, it's about how they feel when they're with you. So I'm going to show you a video in a minute which shows you how not to do it. It's not like a game of Pokemon where you want to collect one of everything. We can't do that, and it wouldn't be fair or reasonable, but it's about how you treat people and how they feel when they're there with you as well. And the other point to being inclusive and diverse on the inside, so that it matches the outside, is that it makes it easier, it makes it more efficient, it makes us better, it makes it safer. A more diverse workforce across the board will reduce our blind spots. If we listen to our people and our people are diverse, then they're going to point things out that we won't see. And this will organically start to improve the inclusivity of our practice and the materials that we use inside our school as well. So it is a very much kind of inside outside job. Do people from different groups feel welcome and safe in our school? It's not just are they there, it's how they feel when they're there. And if you're thinking, yeah, they do, I would like to question, how do you know this? How can you be sure? If you don't already know, or you're not quite sure, how can you find out? And actually, if you've got an idea that there are some people, whether that's students or staff or host families, if they don't feel safe or welcome, then how have you shown that you recognize this? And what steps are you taking to try and make it better? Because we can't keep everybody happy all the time. We can just do our best and we can listen. So what are we doing to improve the areas that we know are perhaps not our best? Other areas to think about are things like our job adverts and our application process, our interview process. You can have the most inclusive classroom, but you might find that the way that teachers come into your school is actually really, really tricky for someone who is neurodivergent, or might not be able to get the time off for the interview because of their caring responsibilities. You know, they might not be able to afford the travel. What other options are you offering to make your whole process all around more inclusive and more accessible? Our schools, our organizations and our brands exist as a whole. So if we want our past, present and future students to experience or feel something, then that really needs to be true all the way through everything we do. It needs to be true for all of our staff as well, everybody in the school, from the teachers to the cleaners, to the host families, to the directors, everybody. And it's also important, as I hope I've made really clear, that the goal is progress, not perfection. And progress is continuous. We are looking for actions that match our values, and we are looking for honesty about the areas that have got room for improvement. No one is asking you to be perfect. You cannot tick diversity off your list. You will never be finished. Some examples of things that some people choose to do within their schools to show their kind of inclusivity. They might like to recognize awareness days to celebrate and shine a light on groups that are perhaps not so usually seen. People have differing views about celebrating awareness days. I think it's quite a personal thing. So that might be like International Women's Day, for example, or Pride Month. And I think, again, the important thing here, as we've discussed, is about it not just being that one day or that 1 month. It's about bringing those kind of values through everything you do all the time and just highlighting them even more during those specific times. Some schools like to create safe spaces for people, even just having, a pride flag up somewhere. I attended a really lovely talk at an English UK conference, and they talked about having, the LGBTQIA materials and information in the middle of or alongside another board, so that students don't have to self-identify by going and looking at the board for the gay students. They can just be looking over things and recognize something that shows you're welcome here, and that might be something that they wouldn't experience in their home country as well. You can use things like pins, symbols, flags, posters. You might find that your staff want to include their pronouns in their emails, and you might be looking, I hope that schools now are really looking at their learning materials as well and thinking about how these can be made to be more inclusive and anti-racist as well. And if you're interested in inclusive learning materials, I would urge you to check out the webinar from Giovanni Licata, which is about his project of the unpublished. So even if you don't have the most inclusive learning materials, you can work in your classes with your learners to unpick what's missing, who's not there, who are we not seeing, and you can make a whole lesson out of creating even more inclusive materials. I've got a lovely comment here in the chat that I'm just going to read out. I think that inclusivity is about having the skills and the attitude to be mindful for one's surroundings, because everybody needs to be included regardless of how they're defined by their backgrounds. It's impossible to be inclusive if we set the bullet points beforehand that are based on some identity information. Exactly right. It's not so much something to do, it's a way of being. That's how I feel about diversity and inclusion. Okay, so this question, what do we do if we get it wrong? Oh, thank you. Imogen's just shared the link to Giovanni's webinar if you want to check that out as well. I'm going to show you a video of what not to do, which I think we've got just enough time to watch.
Our company would really benefit by hearing about some of your experiences.
I actually wrote a book all about them, so you can just buy the book.
Panel.
What?
We really want to do a panel.
I don't know if those
Panel.
Really... Oh.
Panel.
You think those really make a difference? Sorry to interrupt, sir, but your diversity training seminar is about to begin. Workplace diversity training, huh? How's that going?
Really, really great, Lily. We discovered yesterday that diversity in the workplace makes you a winner.
East Asian employee. Does anybody have an East Asian employee?
Oh my God, I won. Bingo. I've got an East Asian employee in my office.
We may have a winner. Let's check it out.
Obviously, East Asian employee, female, you call, I got at least one of those. I've got a gay employee, I've got a South Asian employee. The free space, I've got a minority intern that works for free.
We have a winner, all right. Great example of an executive. Congratulations, sir.
Damn it, I didn't have a female employee.
I don't even know what a pansexual is.
Oh, dang. I'm so glad to hear you think that. So you've actually been interviewing candidates of color?
Oh, yeah. We've been interviewing him, all right. Hi, Shauna. Thank you so much for coming back in to see us. Oh, and thank you for making time last week to interview us as well.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
After a lot of consideration, we've all decided that you'd be a tremendous asset to our company. Brochure.
Oh.
You truly have everything we could possibly ask for when it comes to showing the world what our values are.
Does this mean I got the job?
No, actually, we gave it to a guy named Bill instead. But I did manage to snag you one of these for your portfolio. You're welcome very much.
And you actually have positions available though, right? Because I've heard a lot of companies just conducting interviews even though they have no real openings, which is why.
Oh, no. We've got some fantastic positions. Thank you so much for coming in today. Our company has a position open that we think you would just be a tremendous fit in.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm honored. What's the position?
Center field. Huh. Our company just joined a softball league, and it just really feels like we're just missing something.
Oops, sorry guys.
Our company would really benefit by hearing about some of your
Let me just find the right place.
experiences.
You know, I actually wrote a book all
I don't know if I can scan it through on here.
about them, so you just.
That's fine. I think you get the picture of this one. So let me just show you the next bit that I wanted to see. I'll share the link to that YouTube video because it does go on a little bit longer. But I really like, it's an American comedian, and I really like the way that she contrasts some things that we might try and do with the reality of how that affects people. And before we go, I just want to talk about a couple more points. As I said, I'm not going to keep you for more than an hour, and I've got 3 minutes left. So the question here that we said we would come to is, what should we do when we get it wrong? And like I said, it's a when, not an if, because we're always going to make mistakes and we're always going to slip up. So I can't promise you that you'll never get it wrong. But if you are in the practice of listening and learning, then the chances are that you will become aware of any potential errors much sooner. And if your workforce is diverse, then you're going to have more eyes and ears to the ground. They're going to help keep you in check and spot potential pitfalls before they happen. What I would say is that if you do get called out for something or someone gives you feedback, before you do anything else, listen. Even if it makes you feel defensive or horrible, or even if it's uncomfortable. But if someone has gone so far as to share their lived experience with us, then we need to show respect and empathy, even if they're heightened. What we do next, once we've listened, is, that will be up to you, and it will depend on the unique elements of the situation. But if you listen first, be present before reacting, then you're much less likely to go wrong. And I also think that it really is about intention versus impact, right? Consider your actions carefully. Do your research and check your intention before you put something out there. Get sense checks, not just from you, but from other people around you as well, and from a diverse group of people. And then once you've made your plan and your decision, then you shoot the arrow and you hope that it lands as intended. But if it doesn't, then accept the impact. Take ownership, take responsibility, be accountable for the impact. Know that you've planned your intentions, but also understand that the impact is a real thing and it is part of our responsibility as well. And we use what we've learned and we try to aim better next time. So I've got a little slide to see if there's any questions, and I've got a question in the chat already, and then I've got just one video to finish on. So if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat. We're probably going to run over by like 3 minutes, I think. So if anybody does have to leave, that's okay. And obviously you can watch the recording if you want to hear the questions. The question that I have in the chat is what we shouldn't write or promote related to diversity in marketing, like the don'ts, but about the published content. Abir, you said you've got a problem with your sound, so I'm not going to ask you to unmute, but I just want to see if I can clarify that. Do you mean like a list of things that you absolutely shouldn't write about, like topics that you shouldn't write about, or things that you shouldn't do in your written content? I just want to be clear on the question. And if I don't have time to answer the questions now, then I should have all of your emails from the sign up, so I can pop you a little message and we can always talk a little bit more outside of this room. Does anyone have any kind of burning questions that they want to ask before we watch the video and finish?
I have a very quick question.
You can, yes.
Can I ask?
Yes.
You talked a bit at the beginning about inclusive language, and I was wondering if you could give some examples of what are types of inclusive language.
Yeah, so that's thinking about, for example, how we might talk about one that I use a lot The example that springs to mind is, so I work in one of my other roles in a charity with families, work with children as well. And we, in the past, people would talk about mums. Oh, the mummies are coming to pick you up. And then it might be like mummies and daddies, or it might be parents. But now we use the language of like your adults or your carers. So you might think about that for the children in your class, because not every child will be with their mum or their dad. And that kind of language shows that you see everybody within the group. But it could also be thinking about how we use like gender language, respecting people's pronouns as well can be included in that, and just thinking about how we describe things and people in a way that is sort of kind and up to date. And obviously it's something that evolves. Language evolves a lot, so that is one of those things that we need to really listen to our students and our staff as well, to make sure that we're kind of in line with how people like to be addressed and spoken about. I hope that makes sense. So, Abir, I'm going to write to you because I want to think about your question a little bit more, and I don't want to run too far over time because I made a promise that this very quickly slipping away from me. So I'm going to play the last video, and I'm going to end after that. So before I put this on, I just want to say a really, really big thank you to everybody for coming today, because it's a tricky topic and it takes actually, I think, a bit of vulnerability and bravery and courage to come along and say, I want to learn more about this. So I really respect that. I also want to say that this is the last in this series of the IH Diversity and Inclusion webinars. And there is a link to all of the webinars which you can watch back. There are some incredible topics, a really broad range, and we are hoping to launch another series again later this year in the autumn. So if you have any ideas of things you'd like to see, things you'd like to learn, or things that you have learned that you would like to share, then please do get in touch with myself or Imogen or any of the IHWO team, and we would really love to take your suggestions and your ideas on board, because we have all got so much to learn from each other. That's the one thing that I pick up and I'm reminded of every time we do one of these. So thank you everybody for coming. I'm going to show you one video, and this is, I find it quite emotional, but it's why I think representation really matters. I'll try not to skip this one by accident. Thank you so much, everyone. Maybe that audience is not, maybe you're not trying to attract like lots and lots of little girls like the ones in the video into your school. But I think when we watch a video like that, we cannot deny the power of seeing ourselves in places where we've previously not seen ourselves. Representation really matters, and everything that you are already doing to welcome and involve more students and more staff in your schools is already paying off. So thank you for all your hard work, and keep going and stay in touch. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your weekends. Goodbye.
Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. My pleasure.